Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session that we are actually going to conduct with some of the very eminent folks in the industry on healthcare. Technology has been a critical disruptor in every facet of life and literally turning the world upside down with each pivot. This is not new. Every significant change in our civilization has been driven by technology, right from early humans. After all, the first tools that were developed were technology transformations as well in terms of what the early humans did. Today, the same transformation is seen with increasing sophistication at every single level in the system, especially things like AI, which are completely transforming everything. And we're going to talk a lot about it as we go along. As per Wikipedia, Sushrut, from 800 BCE in the Indian subcontinent is known as the father of Indian surgery, the father of plastic surgery, for inventing and developing surgical procedures captured in what was known as the Sushrut Samhita or compilation. How far have we come from there with telemedicine, powerful surgery assistants, wearable technology, and AI-driven diagnostics? However, we will probably just scratch the surface. And as the future unfolds itself, we have immense opportunities and possibilities in front of us. We are at the precipice of another pivot. Today, to discuss the future of healthcare in the country, where it probably all started, we have with us Rajiv Sikka, CIO, Medanta Hospital, an Indian chain of multi-speciality medical institutes based in Gurugram. Rajiv has key achievements in enhancements of core ERPs of the hospital and adopting digital synergies to roll out hospital's 5-year digital roadmap. He has also taken key initiatives in emerging technology for ICU supervision and remote patient monitoring using big data and IoT, preoperative care planning using virtual reality, chatbots for inpatient services, and artificial intelligence cohorts for early detection of cardiac diseases. Rajiv, welcome to the roundtable. Please, we would love to hear from you as an introduction.
Great to be, part of this panel discussions, and great to hear that Walmart, despite being known for a different industry vertical altogether, is now thinking about bringing tech into the healthcare, which is a very desired need of the nation as a whole. Look forward to have this, collective learning and collective experience of next 1.5 hours.
Awesome. Thanks for being here and thanks for being part of the roundtable. Next, we have Enbasekar D, co-founder and CTO MediBuddy, one of India's largest end-to-end digital healthcare platforms. He leads a team of more than 200 customer-focused members that is following a data-driven, iterative product development process. He is also building high-performance engineering teams for product at DocApps. Over to you, Enbasekar, for your introduction.
Pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me on this eminent panel, and looking forward to the discussion with the panel.
Awesome, great. Finally, we have Ajit Narayanan, Chief Technology and Product Officer for MFine, an online doctor consultation program. Ajit comes with more than 20 years of experience in product and engineering and has built several products and platforms in e-commerce, mobile, consumer internet, healthcare, energy, and integration. Welcome to the roundtable, and Ajit, few words from you.
Thanks for having me here, and I'm looking forward to the next 1.5 hours of learning, I think, more than anything else. So thank you once again.
Awesome. So here is what we're going to do, folks. We have a bunch of 5 or 6 different core topics, and I have some set of questions that I will pose to each one of you and post your answers. It'll be great if anybody has any points, please raise your hands and we can have a little bit of discussion on it, or we just keep going through the set of questions. Let's try to make it as interactive as possible in terms of what we can get as information for all the viewers. So let's start with the first section, which is healthcare reform and future of healthcare. Let me start with you, Rajiv. In an intense, critical, and dynamic sector like healthcare, electronic medical records, or EMR, is an extremely important and basic need. Despite its acceptance and importance, EMR has a lot of adoption challenges. There is Ministry report of 2018-2 on EMR adoption challenges. Amidst EMR struggle to scale, how do we go to the next level towards the future of healthcare by much better adoption for EMR?
Sure. So, Rohit, you very rightly said that EMR has a strong importance, and what it does is that it ensures continuity of care and further optimize it. In a healthcare sector, life without EMR is nothing. But at the same time, challenges are also there, despite knowing its importance. And there are challenges because of multiple reasons, which are all genuine reasons. ROI is one, change management is one, lack of technical resources another one, technical and functional resources, I'll say, non-standardization, interoperability, which a lot of people are talking about, connected hospitals. Some of these are very genuine challenges, and country as a whole and industry sector as a in particular is struggling on this. Now, having said so, there are, according to me, this challenge will continue, but at the same time, market is also going in a different direction altogether. And what I call it as a beyond EMR. And what, according to me, is the future is both EMR and beyond EMR. Let me explain what I meant by beyond EMR. First, understand EMR. EMR, according to me, is nothing but a basic standard system of records. And it has some workflows for caregivers to interact between them. And on top of that, it do some process optimizations and do some MIS around that. Is it important? Yes, it is important, because had it not there, the kind of volume which hospital sector operates, we do more than 2 million tests per annum. We do more than roughly million radiology tests per annum. We do million OPD and IP encounters per annum. So 4 million patient records in a year is too much to handle without system of records. But at the same time, what's happening is that these are, according to me, foundational technologies. While what sector and nation needs is a transformational technologies. And that's what I call it, the beyond EMR. Now, what is the meaning of transformational technologies? According to me, is to do more with less. What is this more? More productive, more proactive, more value. And now let me, you ask very right question that how do I foresee? At one level, we are saying that country is struggling with the adoption of EMR. And this is not my report or your report. You rightly said that 2008, Ministry of Health and Ministry of Electronics, published this report, the challenges in adoption of EMR. So just imagine that you don't have a basic system of records. But, at the same time, there is a parallel track going on. We had a couple of years back challenge with the landline in the telephony, and suddenly country moved to the, mobile. So same thing will continue. Both will coexist for some more time. And according to me, a drift will happen when some of these transformational technologies will become more mature. And what are these technologies? You rightly said AI. You said VR. You said, according to me, big data and IoT, because that's where, IoT is very strong in healthcare industry. And once they become strong enough, the whole concept of healthcare industrialization, or in a simple term, healthcare for all, will evolve. These are, looks like very, very theoretical terms, but let me give you a very simple example. We run country largest CSR, which is TB-free Haryana. TB is one of the most communicable disease. It's very prevalent, and number of people who died per year in the TB is more than the number of people who are dying in COVID. But probably it's a poor people disease, so nobody looked into that. Now, what we have started doing is that, so here we don't have an EMR. We go to rural areas or typical districts, and what we do is that we do a chest X-ray. Now, what is the importance of chest X-ray? Chest X-ray is low cost, very easy, non-invasive diagnostic tool. It's one of the cheapest. Now, what happens is that yet taking an X-ray take probably 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but reading takes hours and hours because we don't have radiologists. Now, we don't have the radiologists because the ratio of radiologist versus patient is very, very poor, not just in India, but worldwide. Now, because of the delay, there are two things which is happening on the quality of care. One, definitely the quality and timely. If the timely detection is not there, obviously you have problems. And in the settings which we are going, we can't send a radiologist in each district, each village for full day, because there are 200 odd scans which you do in one single day, and radiologists can't read 200. So what we are there is no EMR in this case. So this is a transformational technology. X-ray scan comes directly from the modality or the machine, X-ray machine, and it goes to a typical CPUs, which is an independent box, and gives you a report. So it's almost like 90% correct report, and it says that subject has a TB or doesn't have a TB. And what radiologists do is that he has a scan and then he correlates. So that way, what we are doing is that we are reducing the job of radiologists by almost 80%. He has a report ready, he has a scan ready, he doesn't have to do 200 reading. And this is one example which is doing wonders in one example, and I can rattle multiple such examples. But what I'm saying is that had it been not the case, we could have not done a massive TB-free Haryana program, which now we are replicating in multiple states. And this is one very simple example of how a transformational technology, which is beyond EMR, is helping doctors and radiologists to detect a subject with TB or no TB. So according to me, both will coexist for some more time. And as we move forward, there will be drift from EMR to beyond EMR.
That's wonderful. I mean, this is really great to know. I mean, think about you're just giving a completely new and amazing perspective of beyond EMR, right? So it's really about the fact that it's not just your record, it's all your diagnostic as well is happening on the base of the record. Most of the time when we look at EMR, we think, oh, we went to the hospital, there was a report generated, I just want that in digital format. You're not saying that the report itself and the consumption itself is so automated that that itself is beyond EMR. Wonderful. That's really, really great thought. That can really transform, and
sure,
opportunities are endless. Awesome. I'll come to you, Enbasekar, next. Care, and we saw this a lot in COVID, right? The care is really shifting from this whole hospital to the clinic, and from the clinic to the home, to a 24/7 home, right? Driven by mobile phones and technology and everything. Do you think this phenomena is going to continue, or is just a temporal aspect that happened during COVID and it's going to disappear after that?
Rohit, at MediBuddy, we have been pioneering online consultations over the past 5+ years, right? So probably the mobile revolution is a first big mover. So when we are starting out, there are hardly any online consultation platforms. The previous era where physical clunky devices which required particular setups to be done, and it was not very convenient, right? So we have seen this adoption already happen with the advent of mobile and probably the internet penetration boom that we saw in the last 4 or 5 years, right? Of course, COVID has been an additional tailwind, I would say, in terms of additional or accelerated adoption of such digital means to healthcare. If anything, there is a baseline which was already growing, right? And COVID definitely would shift the baseline. There will be temporary, high demand during the COVID period, especially during the wave 1 and wave 2. We were able to see that, but definitely there is significant change in behavior, right? And also typically, as is the case with most new technologies in any stream, right? Be it retailers, e-commerce, or in the travel industry or in the food industry, usually there's always early adopters, and it takes a while before the late adopters or also start using or these newer available forms of interaction. But maybe COVID accelerated that journey as well, right? With the entire world shaken up, and it became a necessity rather than an option or a convenience, and many of us were forced to adopt such things. This is right, not just from individual point of view, right from the caregivers, the providers, be it the doctors, the hospitals, the associated ecosystem of pharmacies and laboratories and diagnostic centers. So all of them had to evolve and adopt not just the digital means, but sometimes also at home care, right? Like even that has seen significant movement, right? Be it care at home became important, more so than COVID related cases. Even other specialties, right? The non-communicable illnesses that needed to be taken care of, we're also seeing an adoption. So that's giving me a strong belief that it is here to stay. Definitely maybe not the same spike, but over the next few years, it will definitely become a significant part of our healthcare journey as any individual.
Great. Yeah. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I had somebody, and all of you must have had examples of people who said, look, it's such a bad time. I don't want my parents really, or somebody older, to go to the hospital and have a secondary infection or a tertiary infection in some sense. If the first part of that disease can be handled at home, then only the emergency folks will be able to go to the hospital. So the hospitals don't get overloaded. And the hospitals were actively playing a role. So, I'm sure, Rajiv, your hospital must have actively played a role as well to enable that to happen so that you don't really show up, because it's a pain for them also to manage everybody there. It's a wonderful transformation in terms of how we are seeing it. Awesome. I'll come to you, Ajit, next. What would be your recommendation for the overall strategy to combat multiple deadly diseases using next-gen AI? I think to the, taking on from what Rajiv was saying, any thoughts you have on that area?
Sure. So I think to a large degree, I think AI is in mainstream healthcare already, right? So, if you look at radiology, medical imaging, all of those pieces, I think intelligent systems have been put into use, and they've of course been saving lives for many years now. But having said that, I'll call out around 3 or 4 areas where I believe AI will start to play, I would say, more central role or critical role going ahead, and my view on what those are, and where we need to be cautious and careful about things as well, because AI, as we know, is not also a silver bullet for anything, right? So one is, of course, starting with the situation that we are in. Pandemic detection is going to be one area where I think AI is going to start playing its part. I don't know if many people know that actually even before WHO announced, or even acknowledged the fact that COVID-19 is on the loose, there was an AI company called Blue Dot which actually identified the spread much earlier, 10 days prior to actually WHO even acknowledging it. And this they did not just by, it's very weird. It's a Canadian company. It was looking at news feeds. It was looking at airline traffic. It was looking at mobile GPS data and all of this, and correlated this information and figured out that, hey, there is something, and there is a rise of pneumonia cases and all of that that's happening in a certain region in China, right? So, of course, it did not come to, I would say, the limelight at that point, but this happened. What it sort of says is that I think when applied right, I think this can potentially become the way in which we look at how such disease outbreaks will happen in the future, right? I think people further went on to extend that and say, Brazil and India is going to be the next areas where, and US is where it's going to spread a lot more. Then we started to see a lot of models for the wave 1 and wave 2 and when it'll fade out and all of that. The last model was almost spot on in terms of its the way it predicted when wave 2 will peak and when it will decline and so on and so forth, right? So that is one area where I believe AI will be used, and there will be a lot of companies that be focused on this and looking at this as a one strategic area. Second would be NCDs. I think Enba brought it up as well. I think non-communicable diseases, combating that will be another area where AI will get used quite a lot. Whether it is from cancer to diabetes, these are silent killers, we know. But here, I think the focus will be more on early detection and risk assessment right at the beginning, so that you can make minor modifications or some significant changes to your lifestyle, etc., to make sure that it doesn't complicate into something more deadly for you, right? Mm-hmm. And that is going to be another area where AI is going to play a big role. And I believe some of this will also take shape in terms of digital therapeutics, digital assessments on your mobile, all of that, right? Are there non-invasive ways in which you can actually detect diabetes, right? We are looking at, we are doing some research also in this area, trying to figure out whether you can use skin conditions as a proxy to find out early sugar fluctuations and so on and so forth. I think there will be quite a bit of research and investment that will be going on. Third would be drug discovery, of course. Generative design of algorithms, can produce a lot of results, and from there you can identify potentially what are the likely ones which are to be succeeding, and you can use that to basically for discovering new drugs, efficacy of these drugs. All of this, I think AI will also start to play a role there. And the last, and I believe this is where it's going to be the most impactful, is going to be assistive tech for doctors and providers. I think rightly pointed out by Rajiv as well. He gave the example of radiologists. That's where I think with the EMR and the data and the longitudinal data, very important to know that. I think if you have historical data of patients and if you're able to collect that, there is a lot that you can say. And this is one area where I believe AI, and I think a lot of companies will start to focus on this because data is starting to form, some digitization is happening, and assistive tech for both doctors and care providers, let's put it as a larger bucket, is one area where you will see a lot of sprouting of new innovation and technology and so on and so forth. So these are areas, but having said that, I mean, these will take years. It's not like it's going to happen today, tomorrow. I think strategically it is also important for all of us who are in this game together to also understand, and also consumers to understand that sometimes hype, outstrips reality, and especially when it comes to AI and new age technology, etc. So we should be cautious that we should not be taking ill-informed decisions or deploying something too fast into production, leading to, let's say, non-desirable outcomes and things like that. So we have to play it cautiously, but strategically, I would say these are the four probably broad areas that I think people will start to invest in, and you'll see a lot more play in the AI game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we've sort of scratched the surface. It's very interesting. When I did AI I used to work in advertising systems, and we used to have this AI and R value and everything else. Now I have my kids who come and say, Dad, the R value in Bangalore is increasing. So, it's a problem. So everybody is looking at, graphs and, how COVID, I mean, in many ways, it has gone to the masses now because they're all doing predictions of what's going to happen next. So sometimes events like this just speed up many years worth of this thing. So in retail, for example, we say that, retail has just fast forwarded, COVID has just fast forwarded the future of retail by many, many years in a very short period of time. So on that aspect, let's talk a little bit more about retail healthcare model that will transform the traditional healthcare model. So let me come to you, Enbasekar, first. Retail healthcare is expected to provide convenient and quality treatment and care to millions of people in a country like India. What would be our approach for retail healthcare in India, and are we really prepared for it?
Sure. From my limited understanding, India is a unique market, right? For especially in the primary healthcare space, which is what when we discuss about retail healthcare is typically common. Again, largely non-insured population is significantly large in our country, right? So typically becomes out of pocket, then automatically people look for cost-effective, locally available, and time critical options that are available to them. So that way retail, we always see smaller clinics and facilities here and there. There's always a saying also, like every pharmacy also behaves like a clinic of its own in many non-urban pockets of the country as well. So at least the minds of the people and the ecosystem, it largely exists, but to make it into a large scalable business models, it has definitely hasn't happened so far yet. So but that's a great opportunity in front of us, and primary healthcare improvements is what can fundamentally lead to great eventual outcomes. So definitely that's an opportunity to go after, but challenges is typically around investments, the scaling, or finding the right business models would what will decide whether how big or how large this can become.
Really interesting. Every single pharmacy, as you said, is like a small healthcare provider by itself. And this is true in cities. Imagine how true it is in rural areas, right? So thanks for that context. Let me come to you, Ajit. And I think you touched on this a little bit, virtual reality, augmented reality, 3D printing, robotics, and nanotechnology. There has been an increase in technology adoption in healthcare. Is technology transforming healthcare systems to digitize faster than ever before? Maybe, you answered it in some context before, but, a little bit more that area in terms of the speed at which it is digitizing.
A digital way of looking at things, or digitization, or the digital transformation, as you would call it, I think is inevitable in every industry. I think it's only a question of, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And that's what we've been seeing in other industries so far, right? And healthcare is no different to that, let's say, sort of transformation. So digitization is absolutely a must. And to some degree, healthcare in some way has been a little slow in adopting digital if you really look at it, right? I mean, you read a lot about it, and if you look at Rajiv touched upon that, the adoption of EMR and why we should not be thinking EMR now, but it is beyond EMR and so on, right? So I think it's sort of tried in the past, but I don't think it really took off in the way one would have expected. That's at least the situation in India. West, if you look at the West, I think a little bit more due to regulatory reasons, etc. A lot more digitization has happened. But again, from a point of view of compliance, right? I mean, doctors need to type in whatever they had to type in because you are by law supposed to do that, and so on and so forth, right? But I think the new world is going to be slightly different from what we've been experiencing so far, and in some degree, COVID showed us that a glimpse of that sort of world, right? Unfortunate that it had to come in the form of COVID, but it did nevertheless. One is on-demand healthcare is going to be on the rise, so which means that consumers are going to demand the need for healthcare when they choose, right? So which means it's going to become more and more patient-driven, patient-centric, as opposed to a provider-centric, which is the way it was done in the past. We've seen the growth of telemedicine and I would say at-home care and self-management of sort of conditions and so on and so forth. You're seeing more mobile usage, right? I mean, all of this accessible through mobile and what I call more edge health delivery, which means either at home or point of care, maybe even pharmacies, if they're equipped in the right way that they can remotely connect and all of that. We are seeing fads of continuous glucose monitoring, all of this happening. Yes, it is really, really happening as we speak. And for all of this to happen, of course, the digital backbone is a must, right? Unless you transform the conversation that you're having between a patient and a doctor in a remote medium like this into something that you can refer back to later, digital prescriptions, digital assessments, all of this, it's not going to work. So the transformation of digital is inevitable. That's what I see. Now, I look at a couple of other examples to actually substantiate that. So if you look at the government's push as well, they've been pushing for digital all through, but more so in healthcare. If you look at what has happened with the National Digital Health Mission, it started off as a sort of a larger, vision, etc. A couple of years back, we've been in this industry for a while. We've seen the transformation of that concept itself. 2 years back, it was just concept, and now the whole digital health mission is alive and kicking. In terms of the digital facility and doctor registry, we are talking about interoperability of data and consent management. So, which means that between providers, data can flow with the consent of the user. There is already what we call as a unified health interface, which actually gives you standard interfaces for telemedicine, diagnostics, digital diagnostics, and medicine delivery, and so on and so forth. So all of this is coming from the government. I mean, this is created, of course, with the industry, but this push is starting to happen. Health ID is another example. It was announced in the last, I think, Independence Day, if I'm not wrong. So this push from the government is also another indication that this digitization is happening. And the wake-up call, of course, was COVID, but I think that rapid transformation and the gap it had to sort of, catch up because it started late. It's starting to happen right now, and I think this will continue until these edge solutions are deployed in the hands of users, and more smart hospitals, etc., emerge. I think this will be the way forward.
Yeah, that's very true. I think government in many of these things has a role to play. I mean, we've seen that in the financial industry, digital payments in India, and stuff like that. I think it's a huge part to play as well. Rajiv, let me come to you next on this. Technology has transformed several industries rapidly to improve the quality of human life everywhere, right? We see that happening all around us. While the adoption of technology in healthcare has been momentous in recent times, the strides have come with some strings attached, right? Can healthcare learn from other industry sectors and adopt technology faster?
Sure. I think very well said. Now I'm going to pick up something which Ajit mentioned, and also you also touch upon the subject that every industry, irrespective of vertical, is prone to disruption, and healthcare is no different. Only stuff is that Bhaskar also mentioned that we were relatively slow, and some industries are always lagging behind the technology. But I think this COVID has done the acceleration job for all the industry, and so for healthcare also. For you it is future, for us it is like from Stone Age era to this era. That's the transformation which has happened in the healthcare industry. Now let me take certain basic example. I'm not going to talk about high tech, but I can let's take. It's known that engaged patient recovers faster. So how do you engage a patient, especially in the COVID time when everything is remote and contactless? So what we started doing is that everybody, whenever someone has to be in the hospital, anxiety level goes high. I myself is coming to a hospital for last 7 years, but if I have to go for a simple procedure, my BP will be shooting up, irrespective of the fact that I'm coming here for 6 days a week, 7 years in a row. Okay, so how do you reduce this anxiety? So we know that there are multiple channels. There are more than 100 plus touch points when a patient contacts a hospital in the complete life cycle. So what we started doing is that we have a simple 3D tour. It's a very high-end 3D tour of the hospital. So if a patient is coming, he can figure it out if he's going to be in the room, how the room looks like, how my MRI machine looks like. And it's like a 3D simulation. Okay.
Wow.
If he has to go to the lab, how his blood samples will be taken, how the how a typical OT looks like. So generally in the OT, you always go, with full anesthesia. But here, so comfort level increases. Now this engaged patient. So this is one such example, very simple example. I'll give you multiple examples. So whatever, when I started my journey in a healthcare sector, somebody told me to, draw a digital strategy roadmap of Medanta. Not digital strategy roadmap. All these are individually bouncer words for me, and combined together, they become super bouncer. I was not able to make any sense of it till date, despite being a technologist by core. So what we thought is that let's touch, what a patient needs when he or she comes to a hospital. He or she comes to a hospital in a typical OPD environment, or for a lab test or radiology test, or in an emergency, God forbids, or for an admission, for any procedure. Now, in all of these cases, when the patient walks out, he has a doctor prescription or discharge note or a film or a CD or a lab report without nothing doing. He should be carrying each of this in the handheld. Okay, and that's what so this is one example. Now, other examples are that Medanta is a crowded place. It's like a private AIMS. You have long queues. We don't want patient to stand in a queue and just half an hour for billing, half an hour for nursing assessment, filling the forms and other stuff. So each and everything patient can, it's like book my show. You choose your doctor, you choose your date, you choose time, and then you will get a slot 10:06, 3:05. So precise slot he will get. He has an option to pay in advance. So it's like a boarding card. You swap like so this is one example from the airline industry. Now, remember couple of years back, just 4 or 5 years back, we were captive of our respective air service provider, the mobiles. Now, suddenly the number portability came into picture. So no more torture by respect. So your EMR and your handheld device is a doctor portability or is a hospital portability. Tomorrow, if you are shit scared of this doctor or shit scared of this hospital, you don't like it, you carry this anywhere. And that's what Ajit also mentioned about NDHM. That's what NDHM is doing. They say that you have this, you go anywhere. And that's another example of a technology. You don't have to, I'll give you more example. Last year, we realized that hospital is not like a Swiggy or Zomato where youngsters are, chatting on the mobile phone. We realized that patients are more comfortable with chat. Okay, so we did WhatsApp chat. A simple, very simple tech implementation. As soon as you say hi, that on this phone number, who are the 5 patients who are registered in case, more than one patient registered, then it will ask you that, okay, tell me which patient wants a service. Patient number 2 wants a service. What service? Doctor consult, lab, care at home, radiology, whatever. And then immediately, as soon as you select a doctor, date and time comes, it suggests you, if the doctor is not there, it suggests you alternative doctors of the same specialty. So these are very simple technologies that within 1 minute, you can book an appointment for a doctor or a lab within 1 minute. And this is in production, favorite of the stuff. I'll give you another example, Alexa. Okay, Alexa, we all know, we play with Alexa. So we have video Alexa in a bedside, in a IP room, and its other point is connected to the nursing unit. Now you have traditional bell. The patient brings the bell, nurse has to run all the way. In the COVID period, we were having serious problems with the staff. Now, in this particular case, this is a very simple but very beautiful example. As soon as patient say, Alexa, please call the nurse. So nurse will come on the video. Nurse will ask, sir, please tell me, ma'am, please tell me what do you want. He says, I need a blanket. Now for blanket, otherwise nurse has to rush all 50 meters to just ask, what do you need? Blanket. Blanket is not a nurse's clinical responsibility of a nurse. So as soon as, Alexa heard blanket, it will pass that message to housekeeping. Housekeeping, I will go. So this is another example of a simple technology, which is already prevalent in a lot of other industry verticals. Now I'll tell you more important and more critical, examples. Country has no shortage of probably good cardiac surgeons or neurosurgeons. We feel that cardiac surgeon is great. Country has severe shortage of ICU doctors. Now, in this particular case, ICU setup is easy, but finding an ICU doctor is very, very difficult. So what we have started doing is that we took a couple of hospitals during COVID period in the vicinity where ICU doctors were in short, because we were aware that ICU is going to be in dire need. So what we did is that we set up the remote ICUs, which means that I set up the connectivity of those ICUs into my control room into Medanta ICU. So which means my doctor who's looking into the 200 bedded ICU unit within the hospital, he has the bandwidth, or the team has the bandwidth to accommodate another 200 odd beds in the remote hospitals where the ICU doctors were not there. And that's how we kind of augmented our 200 ICU bed to 400 ICU without even adding one single doctor in the kitty, which was a kind of a experimental stuff picked up from the other industry verticals, that how do you do remote connectivity of devices, and just call the guy on the other side that please do this, increase the ventilator or have the infusion pumps or have the supporting drugs like this. So these are some of the examples which, according to me, we have picked up from other industries which were very mature in the other industry verticals. WhatsApp chat is a simple example. Banking have been doing it, insurance have been doing it, retail have been doing it for ages and ages. So according to me, I think your question was that how fast we can adopt. I think had it been no COVID, we could have taken decades and decades. By the time those technology could have vanished, but we were able to jumpstart and learned and make sure that patient get benefited and caregivers get their life becomes easier. That was the only two goals for us in this last 18 months.
That's a wonderfully apt examples, Rajiv. I think I love the whole idea of know your hospital, know your environment before you get admitted. I mean, we use it in retail to say, before you buy a product, you can experience the product and then buy it. And just the whole customer centricity of it is just, that is the part that really is wonderful, because retail is really about the customer, right? So really making customer as the center of what you're trying to do is a fantastic example in terms of what we can see happen in this space. Let's move quickly to another section, which is on smart and connected hospitals. I think we've covered some of this in some of the other questions, but maybe quickly touch upon some additional aspects here. And since it's a question about hospitals, so maybe apt to start with you, Rajiv. With rapid digital adoption across all industry sectors in recent times, the hospital industry is poised to benefit, right? From many of these technologies, and you talked about it, right? A lot in terms of what you already gave an example of. Can digital transformation across the hospital industry sustain the pandemic levels? I think that is an important question that is really on everybody's mind. Can we really sustain this?
Sure. So I think I'll start with a famous line that once tiger tastes the blood, tiger will not eat the grass. So tiger have tasted the bloods. So doctors have tasted the bloods, patient have tasted the blood, they will not eat the grass. So let me, support this with certain examples. Quite early in the pandemic, we realized that, and Ajit and Sikka both mentioned about this, that care away from the hospital is the new norm and the future of care. Because as a nation, we don't have enough infrastructure and resources to accommodate each and every patient in the hospital. If a patient can be managed at home, let him manage it, care. So I do remember Delhi government and central government said that, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So, government said that we could have home isolation. It's absolutely okay, provided you have certain parameters. It was announced on a Saturday, and within 48 hours on Monday, we were ready with a whole concept of how care away from the home can be given. And this was, nobody else could have thought about how care can be given, away from the hospital, and our hospital is going to lose their revenue. But we realized that this is additional revenue without using your infrastructure. So, we are a hospital for profit. So what we did nothing. In 48 hours, you can't build a robust, high-end tech solution. So we came out with a very pragmatic solution. A link goes to the patient who wants to get registered. He will do self-declaration as per the Government of India norms, and OTP will go to him. He will register himself. So simple, OTP driven. Everybody knows how to, after net banking, everybody knows how to do OTP. So what we started doing is that we started capturing, we started telling him to capture his vitals on a daily basis. If he has difficulty, nurse will call him at 9 o'clock, because by 9 o'clock, every nurse will know that out of this 100 patients, how many have not registered their vitals. And a call goes. And then any threshold which is above and below basic, value prescribed by the doctors and Government of India, we used to, call the patient by a doctor, and the care was taken care. Anything which goes beyond, we thought that let's bring him to the patient. But we did more than 10,000 odd patients in that, roughly 2.5 months of the wave one. And we only brought probably less than, 200, 300 patients to the hospital. So which means that 9,800 patients were taken care. This is one example. And I want to take this more on the non-technical side. See, one, care away from the hospital. Second, we realize that done is better than perfect. Okay. So if you think about, ERP mentality, project will take 6 months for us to come out. So we decided that let's do it and then fix it slowly as we move forward. Okay. Because it's not a surgical stuff, which will make life 1 or 0. Third thing which we realize is that patient behavior have started changing with respect to COVID. People were shit scared to come to the hospital. And we, Medanta, on 4th of March 2020, we were the first hospital to accommodate 14 odd Italian patients on a 4-hour notice from the ministry. That there are these 14, COVID patients, Italian, you have to accommodate that. We were able to set up the hospital within 6 hours, total different ward infrastructure was in place, entry, exits, protocol for donning and doffing, which means that how do you wear a PP kit? That the PP kit was not there, but we realized that how to wear it. Okay. So with all that, there was shit scare. Nobody wants to come to Medanta. Medanta was full of COVID. So we realized that there are 3 important specialties which needs immediate care: neuro, cardiac, and cancer chemo side. Now, on the cardiac side, I'll give you a simple example. We got FDA approved simple pen drive equivalent ECG device when we started shipping to the patient home. And this device, we were remotely helping them how to register one time. And after that, it's a 30-second job. You first put it on the ankle, and within 30 seconds, your ECG will come to Medanta Heart Center. There is senior cardiologist who's looking your ECG. Just imagine that, had it been non-COVID, you have to go to, and there are you go to your neighborhood, you will not find a cardiologist nearby, and the normal doctors can't even read the ECG, forget how they, make sure that you have an ECG. So within, sitting at home at 2 o'clock in the night, you can do ECG and Medanta will respond back within 30 minutes. And these are well-defined calls. Call stating that rush to emergency wherever you are. Don't worry, this is okay. This is just an anxiety. Third thing is that, there are some disturbances, but you don't have to rush to the emergency. Meet your cardiologist tomorrow morning or whenever it is convenient to you. So what happens is that now these ECGs are more popular within our patient community, that they don't want to come for a regular ECG. They say that, why don't you give me device and we will take care. Because reading is done by Medanta at a very nominal cost. So this is one example which I thought is worth mentioning. Everybody talks about telemedicine. our share used to be less than 3% pre-pandemic on the telemedicine side. It has moved to roughly 25%. And in terms of absolute amount, 12 times in March end versus September start. So number of telemedicine, and this is bound to stay. We have not seen any decline in telemedicine. The life have become so easy, both for doctors and patients. Doctors can do this OPD at evening, at night. We started doing instant consults, which was not possible at earlier days. Which instant consult means that somebody elderly or someone child at home has a problem. You just press a button, a doctor will be there in 5 minutes to you. And this is bound to stay because both doctor and patient have tasted the blood. I'll give another simple example. All of us knows about CT and MRI machines, which are big machines, and technicians have to manage them when a patient is lying on the table, because you have to tilt accordingly so that right organs can be scanned in a right angle and right direction. Unfortunately, the technician is getting exposed because of this HRCT were done in bulks and thousands and thousands. They were getting exposed. So what we did is that this console machine, we were able to develop a very basic software to remote this console from outside. It could have never been thought. So what it did is that it helped technician to get unnecessary exposure of, aligning those CTs and MRIs. And are they going to stay? Yes, they are going to stay. Why? Because CT and MRI, also happens in the night. And sometimes senior technician is not there in the hospital in the odd hours. 80 million CTs are done per annum in US. And out of this, significant portion is done in the odd hours. So just imagine that now a CT technician or an MRI technician sitting at home, take the control of that console, help the patient. And this is bound to stay now. This is definitely bound to stay. It is not a high-tech technology. These are simple technology. Only adoption challenges are there. Now it will not be there. So, coming back to your basic fundamental questions, can we sustain the pandemic levels? Yes, we will, because there is no other option. Care away from the hospital is bound to be there. Otherwise, we will not be able to bridge the gap which the country has, both for doctors, nurses, paramedic staff, technician included.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is, once you started this, it's a very difficult thing to put the genie back in the bottle. And you should not. We've been doing a lot of video consulting, and now every time if my kid is sick, the first thing that we want to do is video consulting. We don't want to go stand in line in a clinic and do all of that aspect, and so much more efficient. So yeah, definitely fantastic. Ajit, let me come to you next. I think bringing data together through system integration, it's at the heart of smart hospitals, right? Flexibility and scalability are critical to the successful implementation of this step, right? How do you scale AI, IoT adoption in connected hospitals or smart hospitals at the ecosystem level?
Okay. So I think before I jump into that answer, I'll paint a picture of, in my view, what a smart hospital is, and from MFine's point of view, because we also call ourselves a virtual hospital. So I'll just paint that picture a little bit. Even before that, I think it is important to understand what the users or patients in this case, what they want. I think their needs are pretty simple and mundane, right? What is a patient looking for? He wants outcomes. He wants a very easy access, like you said. Look, I want hassle-free, simple way to get access to healthcare. I want transparency, right? In terms of what is the care that is being given to me, whether it's going to work, if it doesn't, what is the next options, all of that. And I want a cost benefit, right? This is even if I have to go in for surgery and all of that, there is transparency and cost benefit, etc. That's required. So his or her needs are pretty simple, straightforward. And this is what any hospital or any smart hospital must answer, right? I think that is my sort of first principle solution to what a hospital should be or what a smart hospital should be, right? It may not be in the true definition of smart hospital, but that's my way of looking at it. So a smart hospital for me has to be extremely patient-centric. It has to be at the point of care, which means it is going to be distributed as opposed to anything else. This means that there is probably going to be a nerve center where everything sort of, quote unquote, the back end of care happens, which is basically surgeries and procedures and heavy scans and all of that. But you will see a lot of care now starting to move towards the point of need, which is your home. What we saw in the pandemic cases, etc. It is going to be in your hands through mobile. It is going to be close to you, maybe in a pharmacy or a small outpost, remote clinics, whatever not, right? So the hospital is no longer going to be this one physical entity. It is going to be a virtual thing that is going to spread beyond geographical boundaries and so on and so forth on a very, very strong connected care and a technology backbone, right? So this is the definition of a sort of a smart hospital from my point of view. So these traditional services are going to move out of the hospital into localized services, right? Like we are seeing with consultations now. It's virtual, but it's closer to your home. Minor procedures maybe also will move into these remote hospitals or the spokes of the hospitals, if you want to call it that. Physicals, vitals, lab measurements, all of this is going to sort of be distributed. So that is the first and foremost. Now, I think to get to this state, of course, smart deployment of technology and understanding the need, like Rajiv also pointed out, very simple solutions to get this going, I think is the key. It doesn't need flip your everything on its head and try to reimagine, etc. I think you can go step by step. He gave example of a very simple chatbot. That's perfectly a good way to start for a hospital, etc. Right? For MFine, we started with this proposition in the beginning. So therefore, we built a little bit more, I would say, a more advanced version of it where you get instant care immediately. So you see the doctors, you talk to him immediately, and you get the digital prescription and so on and so forth, right? I think very similar in the case of DocSap, I believe, as well. So we are coming to the same solution from different approaches, I believe. But I think the key essence is start small, think of the small little use cases and start with a strong technology backbone. So what you need is a good connectivity. You need the internet backbone. You need to be able to transport data back and forth. All of that is what is essential to get started. Nothing fancy. Now, you used the word ecosystem. Now, to make that happen, I think it is a little bit more, I think a step up in terms of thinking. One, we have to imagine data to be decentralized, first of all. I think that is a little bit of mind shift also for a lot of providers. It is also mind shift for a lot of consumers. That your data could be sitting in multiple providers. I'll go to several hospitals or clinics or visit doctors and all of that. So decentralized data is going to be one key thing that everybody has to sort of tune their heads to and work and build towards. And I think at some point we will have to also do ethical liberation of these data sets. Because once these data sets are also sort of available for others to learn from, I think the whole ecosystem can grow and you can really build stronger foundations, stronger solutions on top of this basic user need that I want outcomes, I want easy access, I want transparency, I want cost benefit. All of that is possible when you start to now liberate these data sets. And this data set liberation needs to happen from users, providers, everybody alike. I think that is important for the smart hospital ecosystem to sort of come to. And lastly, I think understanding of big data and deploying the right mindset of people, etc., to understand the data. Right? It is going to be heterogeneous data. It is going to be different kinds of data. It is going to be EMR data, like we've been talking about. It's going to be information about payers, payments, your longitudinal health. What happened to you 6 months before? What were your lab reports showing at that point? What's your medical history of your parents? What's your lifestyle looking like? All of that multitude of data, and this is all going to be there. It's going to be distributed. So understanding that. And building smart solutions on top is going to be extremely critical for the smart ecosystem to evolve. I would like to just leave with, like, for instance, a few barriers, right, for all this to work properly. I think fundamental blockers, in my view, is culture and mindset and governance. I think these are three things that I believe that will come in the way of this. The mindset that, hey, digital and this distributed nature is going to be the way it is. Data is going to be more federated, and I think more data that is there and more it is shared, more we learn. I think this is a mindset change. A culture change needs to happen with all providers, right? Like, start small. Imagine that this is the way of the future. That's where I think the ecosystem can build towards it. And lastly, of course, governance has to step in and support this and not block it. I think that's very, very important. I don't believe technology will ever be a barrier to this. I think the classic example we can take is video editing was supposed to be the most complicated and hard to do, skill. TikTok came and changed that thing entirely, right? Everybody on the, your neighbor to your, your people in your house, your parents are into video editing. So I think smart solutions deployed on top of all of this, I think will just breach that barrier that technology is ever going to be a barrier to all this. So it's not going to be consumers. It's not going to be technology. It is going to be all of this that needs to work together more from the provider and our thinking that will make the smart hospital ecosystem work in the future. Yeah, my view.
Yeah, I like that, the whole thing. You said the culture, the governance, and what's the third one?
Mindset.
The culture, mindset, and governance are very important. And I see right here, right? I mean, you come from a virtual hospital background in terms of how you are figuring out how you can come virtual and then have the physical and sort of distributed model of doing it. And then I see how an established hospital like Medanta coming in from a very established model to a more virtual model. And that's sort of where I think the beauty of eventual healthcare will reside in terms of building these smart connected environments. Fantastic. Great discussion on that. Enbasekar, let me get to a different, sort of slightly different aspect in terms of what we are doing. There has been a lot of consolidation in the healthcare industry, right? Small physician groups combining to make hospitals, telemedicine providers, pharmacy groups. Consolidation is presenting, many cyber liability issues, right? Can data security be maintained while this entire dynamic environment, right, that of information exchange is happening? Because patient data is at the core of everything. So, what's your thought on that area?
Sure. With growth in adoption of digital, technology and the flood of information that is being available digitally, has its pros and cons, and probably this is one of the cons that we have to mitigate strongly, right? Right from ownership of data, best practices on, how to deal with it. Of course, we are not yet a mature digital, infrastructure itself in any industry, and particularly in healthcare, we are definitely a little far behind, right? But having said that, there are practices that we can learn from, right, and adopt. And it's at this moment there are no strong standards that are widely adopted. The typically seen in the HIPAA style, legislations or liabilities and clauses are not necessarily as strong in India yet, but we are definitely making strides toward that in any case, right? Specifically about consolidation, more than consolidation with NDHM and NHA and so on, there is already efforts towards having this information in or the controls in the hand of a individual, right? So even outside of the consolidation, it's still even if two companies are not coming together or acquisitions and mergers aside, it's still anyway is a large challenge to solve, right? Today it's a very today for a care, typically a person ends up interacting with 3 to 4 different entities which are distinct today, right? A prescription generated in a clinic ends up at the desk of a pharmacist who's a independent unit, and again to a laboratory, and the reports, it's still already interconnected. There is just that digital is making this very, very convenient for the customer, but it leads to also more responsibility, right? Because there is an accumulation of information. So it is going to be a challenge. It is an area that we have to learn very fast, but hopefully, just like in many other areas that we have leapfrogged, this is an area that I hope that we will do a good job of that as well. And the second aspect is in the interim, it's responsibility on each one of the participating entities in the ecosystem to self-adopt, right, or self-govern some of these best practices, right? Be it access controls, again, very simple, established best practices, even outside of healthcare. I think that's the first step. Then comes specifically about PII and PHI comes later, right? Like PHI it's a common problem across the digital industry. So we have to ensure at least the basics of those, right? ISO standards, ISMS certifications, those are already available. So self-certifying or taking initiatives around those would be a very, very necessary first step that the ecosystem should adopt, and followed by maybe more specific healthcare standards along the lines of HIPAA, and at least the best principles from these should definitely get adopted.
Yeah, I think standards is very, very critical. I mean, as you know, Walmart is one of the largest pharmacies amongst the top few pharmacies in the US. And, we build a lot of that software here, and we spend a lot of our energy is really based on HIPAA compliance. We have our associates who are even writing software actually get HIPAA compliance before they can actually write software in the specific area and product and everybody else. So I think getting some of those standards is important, because the patient record, right, and your data, while the ability for you to be able to take your record with you is extremely important, but the sanctity and safety of that data is absolutely paramount, because if that starts to get out, then we don't know what all can happen, because that is really it's like more important than even the biometric data, because everything else sort of goes from there. So yeah.
If I may add a point quickly, like I mean, it's not necessarily alien to the technology world in India, right? India probably has built a bunch of these systems for the world, right? Being the software capital of the world. So it's about using those for our internal needs, and the companies in here adopting them, hospitals and the healthcare facilities adopting them. So again, like Ajit mentioned, it's not a technology barrier. Probably we already have very strong strength implementing it in other nations and other countries, and it's only about the drive to implement these best practices here.
Got it. Great. Let's move a little bit to virtual reality, maybe wearable technology in healthcare and things around that. So maybe we'll start with you this time, Enbasekar. I mean, virtual reality in healthcare is gaining momentum in recent times, right? And what do you think are the top 3 areas in healthcare that can be impacted by VR adoption?
Definitely, there are multiple angles to it. I would say it's still a very nascent space, right? Like the only area where it has seen a good popularity in the mass market kind of way, technologies, right? Be it your fitness trackers, your step trackers, and so on, and smartwatches probably more recently, and probably those are the new age technologies that have seen some large scale adoption, right? The other category where some of this could help is definitely in specific use cases, right? Maybe in chronic care, maybe in cardiac care, that Rajiv mentioned as well, right? Or post-operative or post-hospitalization care. These are some definitely it can be valuable. AR and VR typically, again, one is around training. It could be a very valuable asset, right? So one of the things that physicians in India are specifically exposed to is the number of patients that they or the number of varied cases that they see or encounter during their training phases or training period, etc. And some of those could be accelerated through the right use of technologies, right? Be it surgical or even to an extent because of the digitization, people can go through these virtual consultations or learn from the consultations from the best doctors and so on. So the speed of learning can definitely in the medical community can improve, right? Right from doctors and also the other caregivers, right? Definitely tools have helped during this phase as well, right? When COVID is a new pandemic, and it's new to everybody in the medical industry as well. So the dissemination of information, training, care protocols, all this had to be disseminated in a fairly fast way. And again, that's an area where the new age technologies can be of help, right? Where it helps the caregivers to also train, at scale and at large, and therefore are well prepared when a situation like this emerges.
Got it. Yeah, definitely. Those are areas that can completely transform in many ways. On the same lines, but in a different context, Rajiv, and I'll come to you. We all understand that there is a huge gap between desired caregivers to patient ratio. Caregivers here are not just doctors, but includes nurses, technicians, paramedic staff, everybody else, right? Skilling them through traditional methods may take a very, very long period of time, right? How can technology help in that space?
Sure. Rohit, I'll start with, with mythology, that Dronacharya was only for Pandavas and Kaurav, while we need many Eklavas to get trained. And, you guys may have to put some subtitles in case people are not aware of Ramayana, if you outside India stuff. So we need many Eklavas across spectrum of the society. So, you can build 22 district hospitals in UP and 11 names in the country, but where are those caregivers who can run those hospitals? And I think VR is one such solid arsenal in our kitty which can help. I'll take examples, right from surgeon to a doctor to a paramedic staff, because that's what constitute a typical caregiver. Very important and very critical success factor in any surgery is a pre-operative planning. So what it means is that doctor one day before or just before the surgery decide how he's going to plan the surgery. Now doctor relies on typical 2D media, which is a CT or MRI. It's a 2D video, okay, while doctor is operating in 3D world. Now the transition from 2D to 3D is a skill of a doctor, how experienced, how smart, how how many surgeries he had done of the similar kind. Now in this particular case, let's assume and shift to VR or immersive reality. I'm going to use these words, immersive, virtual, augmented, collectively. So this VR, what it does is that it take the real MRI, CT infusion of this and build a true anatomy of this patient in a 3D environment. So what doctor is seeing is that what he's going to open on the day of surgery, that how his brain is going to look like. Okay. So in this particular case, doctor know what exactly he's supposed to do. Instead of wasting time in the OT table and doing, what if analysis, you don't have the luxury of the time in the OT table of what if analysis. That's why doctors are got, because they take the decision then and there itself. So this is one example. And now let's translate this into next step. So as I said that surgery, especially brain surgeries, are, a lot of anxiety in the patient. So this can also be used to educate patients. See, look, this is your 3D, this is your brain is going to look like, and this is what we are going to do. This is a small knob, we will cut it. Don't worry, it will be done in half an hour. It's a super patient education. This is one example of VR, and plus you are training surgeons. Neurosurgery can't be trained on cadavers. You can't train a brain surgery on a dead body. Okay, so this is one example. Let me go and take example of phobia treatment. Okay, phobia or psychological disorders are no more a taboo. It is there in all age and all social strata of the society. It's no more a secret. Now, counseling or real-time counselor are the best, no doubt. But the challenge is that where are these counselors? Okay, so we have a severe shortage of these mental health doctors. Second thing is that sometimes, even if the doctors are there, it is very, very difficult to simulate the situation which has a phobia, like fire. You can't burn your OPD department because somebody wants to get treated for a fire. Okay, or if he has a water issue, so he's so all those can't be done. So all of these situations can be simulated with the help of a simple VR environment where a patient will get taken care. I'll get one more dimension. There are patients who have allergy or kind of a resistance to a male voice or a female voice, or a child will only want to speak to a child. So in this case, VR will simulate the language which is preferred by a patient or a subject, and just translate it into 22 or 50 odd dialects which India speak, and forget about we treat more than 89 country patient. So those languages are also challenged. So all of those can be done with the help of a VR. Very simple example, but there are POCs which are done, and surgical example which I took simulation is already in production in Medanta for fairly long period now. Okay. Now let's move to nurses and paramedic staff. When you talk about trauma center is always a chaos, whether it's a 100-bedded AIMS or a 30-bedded Medanta. Now, whatever computer-based training or a classroom workshop you do, you can't simulate a trauma or a disaster in a classroom. So, there we attempted that. It's in the early stages, but that's what we want to do, that how to simulate a trauma center, difficult situation and train your caregivers there. One more stuff which I just want to, you must have seen, I'm talking about now paramedic staff or technician who manages complex medical equipments. There are hundreds and probably thousands of shops around each and every nook corner of the India, or how to repair your mobile phone. But have you ever seen how to repair your X-ray? Have you ever seen, how to repair your ultrasound machines? There are none. Okay, and all of these technicians and paramedic staff who are trying to operate this, they do training. But unfortunately, they are never trained, because that training you can't simulate that when the malfunctioning happens or the equipment go for a toss, what is your reaction? Because in training it, the situation never comes. This is 1 in a million kind of a scenario. So you do this advanced training using, again, VR. There's no equipment at the OT table is not functioning. What you do? So instead of having a crisis, you train them how to manage the crisis. So this is another training, and so forth. Another example which is used by junior doctors and other stuff is that we say in healthcare, the best key is that how do you diagnose a disease by reading or looking into the symptoms, because symptoms may lead to you have to diagnose, you have to go through multiple layers of symptoms checking. Okay, I have a pain somewhere in my calf muscles, both when it happens, all that, probing questions, and then you figure out what is the exact disease or ailment. And that kind of a real-time patient interaction can be simulated again by VR. So these are some, and this is very, very important. A lot of times we always crib that doctor doesn't have time to listen or to hear my problem, and he simply started writing the prescription. So this with the help of a VR or augmented reality can be solved to large extent. So again, as I said that for a country like India, where future hospitals may or may not be possible, but they are definitely going to get close, because we don't have enough caregiver staff. This is a known fact. Niti Aayog, skill department, everybody is looking into this, and they have this early convert. They could be possible early converts of this VR technology to train this huge population. We have population. Only stuff is that we don't have a right arsenal and a curriculum and mechanism to train using tech like VR. So according to me, we have to train many Kalvyas.
That's really good thought. I mean, I think it's extremely important to make sure that we use technology not just for solving the issues of the patients, but really also training everybody towards that. And hopefully through this process, we'll not have one but many Eklavyas, and we'll not ask them for their thumb in return. Hopefully this will spur many people who hear this to go read the story of Eklavya. It's a wonderful story from India's epics. Question to move a little bit on data and AI. So Ajit, I'll come to you. AI aims to move medical treatment away from general one-size-fits-all to more personalized solutions. With data analytics capabilities, healthcare companies really can collect, store, and analyze data. What is your thoughts on personalized medicine to be, advanced way of leveraging data and AI?
Yeah, I think again, maybe a step back, thinking about why that is the case today, or this one-size-fits-all. There is still a large problem today that even the world's best scientists and doctors, we still don't understand deeply enough how different people develop diseases and how they respond to treatments and all of that, right? So that is still, I think, an evolving space. Not take the example of COVID, how the mutations happen, how it affects. I think we are probably in day one there, right? And the same can be said for even the most complicated of conditions that exist, right? So we have to understand that it is a very deep, very complicated, an extremely hard space, healthcare in general. I think that's first. But having said that, I think there are two broad areas of what I would call as personalized medicine that, again, my view, which can actually benefit from data and AI and all of that. So one is what I call as sort of personalized care in quotes, which is a little bit more, being a little bit more human. in the whole care process. I think that is a must. A lot of times today, patients do get the feeling that, Rajiv also pointed out, saying that, hey, he doesn't have time to even listen to me. He's quickly writing down something, right? People view this as inhuman in terms of non-human transaction, right? So there is a care element of that is which is personalized. It needs to be close to me. That is one element of it. And the other one is a lot more deeper science of precision medicine. And I'll talk about both. So we'll talk about the personalized care bit. And this is where, at MFine, we've been focused largely on this. We are not a precision medicine and we don't plan to go in there anytime soon. But on the personalized care bit, I think there are a few things that we can do with data and AI. One is, of course, population-based analytics will help to a large degree to understand somewhat of trends in terms of how certain diseases sort of evolve or efficacy of certain drugs evolve in a certain profile of patients. 40 plus male patients with a certain precondition may react in a certain way to a certain kind of treatment plans given, right? Or their disease progresses in a certain way. This you can figure out as you see more and more cases and more digitization you have, you should be able to figure this out. And that you can do to some degree. Is it precise? It is not, but it helps to some degree. Very simple solutions to things like keeping the patients informed on what they must do during the care process. Care process doesn't end with when the doctor writes a prescription and gives you, it doesn't end there. There is a whole process of adherence and making sure that you follow what is being told, then check back and see if actually outcomes have come to you or not, right? And that needs a little bit of adherence. Simple things like reminders. For us, when we built this whole platform, the one feature that we thought was like a small little thing that we'll provide, but turned out to be the most loved features was just simple medicine reminders. Once doctor prescribes, telling you that, hey, it's 9 o'clock, please have your medicine, was the most appreciated feature, very counterintuitively. We thought it was, yeah, sure, why not? But it turned out to be the case, right? So simple things like that makes it a little bit more human. Some more deeper solutions here would be, let's say, for instance, when doctor is prescribing a medicine, drug-to-drug interaction. If you know what the patient has been having, or if he's on medication, especially in chronic care cases, etc., this is something that you could very easily do. Data for this is available. We do this at MFine. So when somebody is prescribing a medication, and if you're already on, let's say, a chronic medication, etc., then it is very important to tell the doctor that, hey, what you're prescribing is probably going to be harmful for the patient. Let's make a change here or whatnot, right? So that means knowing history of the patient, suggesting the right solution for the doctor, keeping them informed is bringing a little bit of humanness into this whole care. I think that is one element of personalized care where I see data and AI being used, and we are using it. The other bit is, of course, precision medicine and going into genetics, right? Meaning really going to tailoring healthcare to everybody's genetic makeup. That is at least the promise behind the genetic and precision medicine. And genomics has evolved quite a bit. There is a lot of research and study in that direction. You see a lot of drug companies trying to understand efficacy of medications even before it's been launched, etc. Moving from reactionary medicine to sort of prevention, understanding genetics deeply. I think that is also where a lot of investment is happening. We are, of course, not in that game, but I believe these are two elements of sort of personalized medicine. The former one, in my view, I think we need to make the whole healthcare human. And I think that's where we could, all of us could play a part and start. So yeah, that's my view.
Yeah, a lot of stuff to come in the personalization part of it, personalized medicine part of it. And of course, data plays such a critical role there.
One thing I want to add, sorry.
Yes, please.
When you said data, and when you use data for all this, we should also understand that data sets inherently come with biases. And there can be biases because of ethnicity and your background, etc. Right? So for providers such as us, we should also be able to understand that there is inherent bias in every data that you see. So you have to make sure that that is also balanced out. It's it's a interesting prospect, but also a very tough problem to crack. Yeah, sorry for the interruption.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly the idea of this discussion. I think that's the important part. Bias is such a important ingredient in any data set, right? Whether you take healthcare or you take real life or take anything else, right? That it can really lead you to a totally wrong direction sometimes if you just end up in that aspect. When we are seeing that in social media, right? You only see the news items that agrees with your political view, right? That there's a huge data bias there, right there and there. None of this, I know, none of this is complete unless we talk a little bit about health insurance. So, Shekhar, I'll come to you, right? Where do you think are the major challenges witnessed across the health insurance sector today, specifically in, could be related to COVID, not related to COVID, but where do you think are the challenges?
As with most parts of the ecosystem, right? Like, health insurance is a key part of the healthcare ecosystem for sure. And it's also a fast growing, evolving space, right? So, and of course, pandemic affected not just healthcare, but every industry, but and therefore definitely health insurances had seen different kinds of impact, right? It was very different in the first wave versus the second wave, right? First wave, lockdowns in fact reduced the number of admissions and the claims and so on. But whereas the second wave is a very different beast of its own, right? Where simultaneously probably the claim volumes have gone significantly up across board, right? So and therefore to manage that kind of a scale, adoption of tech again becomes key. In such in health insurers as well, right? We do work in our capacity with a few of the health insurers, although we are not a health insurer ourselves, but we could see the challenges that they face and how they look at solving, right? Like the full value chain of health insurance journey, right from discovery of right policies. People had to innovate and come up with newer policies to suit the pandemic needs and so on. And there is also level of uncertainty as well, right, for the insurers in terms of what could it mean for them, right, in terms of the the claims ratios and the core metrics that drives the insurance forward. So there was definitely a level of uncertainty. So a lot of them had to be relooked at or rethought through. So right from pricing of products to underwriting or risk models, actuarial, all of this had to definitely evolve. And again, they were probably already in the evolution phase, but probably now accelerated again with rise in COVID, rise in it's a sudden step response to the entire modeling that was done in the past, right? Like no one envisages a large pandemic when it comes to building policies, building products in the health insurance space. So it's definitely a major impact. Hopefully it sets the industry up for the future as well, right? These just like other and digital telemedicine and digital ecosystems, the digital health insurance ecosystem also is definitely evolving rapidly.
Yes, I mean, it's a great point. I think insurance is such a fine balance between value to the customer and financial viability of the insurer, right? Because if you destabilize it, either they'll be insurance companies or all the patients will be taken for a ride, right? So I think both sides is the problem. Fantastic. I know we can go on and on. There are so many topics on my list, but in interest of time, let's end with this important question. Same question that I'll ask all three of you for your views. And this is something that always interests me because if you look back and 10 years ago, what would you have thought where we would be today versus where we are today, right? So the question really here is that if you look at your crystal ball, right, and let's say we are having exactly this session 10 years from now, what are the three top things that you feel would have significantly changed in the next decade? I'm all hoping that COVID will not be there 10 years from now, or any form of that won't be here. But beyond that, from given the context of healthcare and technology, what are the 3 things that you believe 10 years from now would have completely changed? So maybe Rajiv, Ajit, and Shekhar, if you can go in that order.
According to me, big data and IoT, getting fed into AI, will come out as a major assisting tool to the physician. Because what's happening is that right now there is a myth that doctors and clinicians and surgeons and physicians are challenging this because they think that this is a kind of kind of substitute to them. A couple of years back, I was talking to one of the very senior doctors who's in 70s, that he says that we used to touch the stomach of a patient and figure it out what's the problem. Ultrasound machines were not there in the country. Just imagine the ultrasound machines were not. He says when he started practicing, ultrasound machine was not there. So we used to figure it out by touching the bowel of the patient. Okay. And he says that when the ultrasound was coming, we all started thinking that, now, probably practice is going to be, challenging. So same philosophy is going to happen with some of these AI for radiology, some of these AI for, mental health, some of these AI around, lot of information. We captured more than 20,000 odd data points from a per bed per day. Okay. For a patient in the ICU, 20K data points per day per bed. And a lot of, AI can be gathered out of that. So this is going on. Doctors, data scientists, IT guys have to sit together and figure out what it is. But this will get sorted out in next couple of years, and 10 years down the line, we will not be talking about whether ultrasound machine, was helpful for the doctor or not for the doctor. So AI will be definitely going to be a good assistant for the doctor. That's my, 10 years from now.
Ajit.
Yeah. So crystal gazing is always a little tough. Hopefully nobody holds me to this after 10 years, but
no, I'm going to have the same session 10 years from now for sure.
All right. So then here goes. I think first, we will not be talking digitization. Digitization will be done, completed, done, dusted. It's a thing of the past. It's like, and the follow-up of that is that AI will be mainstream in terms of assistive tech. This is absolutely going to happen in next 10 years. So we will not be talking about, next AI, next digitization. It's a mainstream thing, I believe. It will happen in every element of healthcare, doctors to radiologists. It will be AI, and it will be assistive tech. I'm not saying it takes over or anything of that sort. Second, I think will be surgical care. I think we'll see a lot of changes. Robotics will do most mainstream and it will be mainstream and will do most surgeries. The run-of-the-mill, not the complicated ones, but even remote surgeries will be mainstream next 10 years. I believe. I think that's going to be the next big thing. We did not talk so much about it today, but I think that is going to be one area where I believe truly something big is going to happen. And the third, it's not a technology view, but what I think awareness in people about healthcare and what needs to be done will be at an all-time high. I think it will be fundamentally different from what it is today. People's understanding of chronic illnesses and why it happens and all of that, I think there is a lot of things that because we're moving to the patient-centric world, this is very likely to happen. And eventual result of that is going to be, you'll see a lot more of self-care happening, which means assisted by this AI and doctors and the providers, etc., the whole ecosystem. Mm-hmm. But a lot of things will be managed by yourself. If I'll be able to look at my, where my diabetes is, how to manage it, what should I be doing. I'm fully aware of my, conditions with my family and what I should be doing very early on to make sure that I don't get into that state. I think that's going to be a whole new world in 10 years. So those are the three things that I see will be done, dusted there in next 10 years.
Awesome. It's wonderful. Shekhar, how about you?
Yeah, excellent. I mean, I have very similar views as well, right? Like it's going to be part of life. Like today, we don't talk too much about booking a bus ticket is so complicated, or getting food delivered at home is I'm hungry, food is going to be there, right? Like so that's going to be a similar norm. The only point I would like to add is also a lot more of focus on the preventive and the primary care will definitely improve, is my sense, right? Largely driven by consumerization and adoption of technology, adoption of just the internet ecosystem, right? Like people that would go far and wide, both urban and the rural areas, and it's not necessarily going to be thing for only like as we could see most digital ecosystems, right? Like it democratizes the access to information, access to knowledge, access to quality. And that's going to be definitely the norm in healthcare as well. So irrespective of which part of the country, how well to do I am as an individual, I'm going to be experiencing, very high quality of care. Like I get to watch the same Rajinikanth movie from my mobile phone, irrespective of where I am in the country. Similarly, you can still get access to great healthcare from anywhere in the country. That's definitely what I'm looking forward to, and playing a small part in driving towards that as well.
Absolutely wonderful. I think this is definitely, as always, in every environment, exciting times in terms of taking people from where we are today to a much better health environment. I'm sure, as records say of 800 BC was Sushruta coming up with the first form of any form of surgery that was there. India continues to be a country, an environment where I think a lot of this innovation will happen. I feel that there is a great opportunity for us to be in this environment amongst the 1.3 billion people and find solutions which will not just help us, but really help mankind. And that's kind of, I think, where we all are. It's a very exotic goal, but I think I definitely believe if we all put our minds and energy to it, we definitely can. If you look at the last 10 or 20 years, how much we've been able to transform as a society together and help the world, I think, future is limitless for us. So thank you so much, folks. It has just been absolutely wonderful talking to all of you and learning from you. It's just, we've been in this industry and we do a lot of work in this space, but just learning from each one of you and your context and the fantastic examples. I would say, there's a silver lining on and every problem that we faced. And this is the silver lining of COVID, that we were able to get so much information and knowledge and move forward. So thank you so much for your attendance. Truly appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a wonderful host, Rohit.
Yes.
Thanks, Bhaskar. Thanks,
Thank
Ajit.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.